Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria. As you'll see, a slight experiment here. I'm experimenting with a slight change of angle in my office where I normally shoot. So you can see the sword's at a bit more of a straight angle and some of my antique prints I've got on the wall. I'm also using the natural light that I've got available. I do have new lighting and I do have a new microphone. In fact, I'm going to have a lavalier, I think that it's called, the type of mic that clips onto your kind of collar. I'm going to start using one of those and see if that makes the sound better for you guys. And equally, I've got a new light coming which I might start using when it's not daylight, but as it's daylight at the moment, open up the blinds. There we go. Hopefully this is nicer lighting for you. So yesterday, in fact, was it yesterday? I think, yeah, I posted up a link to some fantastic chainmail or mail armour by a person who does HEMA and also sort of historical reenactment, and they've actually gone and recreated really pretty much, I won't say it's 100% authentic, but much much closer to authentic level of mail armour than you normally see in reconstructions, be it in movies or in reenactment. And I posted this on the Facebook page. If you've never looked at our Facebook page, I post up quite a few things there. Hopefully it's of interest to you. For those of you, I think you can probably see it even if you don't have a Facebook account, but the link's below this video. And that is really interesting. The main headline of looking at these images is that the mail is a lot more fitted to the body and a lot more tailored than you would normally see from mail armour. And we're used to seeing chainmail that looks quite bag-like. And one of the reasons, there's two main reasons for that. One of the reasons is because the mail is usually bought off the shelf. Like my own mail shirt, I have to say, my own mail shirt is too big for me. I could do to probably have a strip taken out of it somewhere around the middle of the back for me, because I thankfully don't have too big a tummy. But mail shirts are made so that lots of people of different sizes and shapes can wear them, and they're made usually mass produced in India for the most part, at least the mail we can get in the UK is. And so it has to fit lots of different people, and it's a fairly generic straight-sided shape. But when you get mail that's handmade for you, it will, of course, just like a suit or just like any other kind of clothes, or indeed like other types of armour, like plate armour, it will fit you and it will work better when it fits you better, and it gives a different look. And if we look at, for example, here I'm going to try and pronounce it, the Makiowski, or it's spelt Makijowski, but I think it's pronounced Makiowski Bible, which is a very famous medieval source from the 13th century, from about 1250, that shows lots of people wearing gambesons and mail and this kind of stuff. So it's pre-plate armour period. So they're wearing a mixture of kettle hats and chevaliers and great helms and things like this. I'm holding this this sallet for a reason I'll mention in a minute. And it's very noticeable if you look at that source, and in fact if you look at lots of other 13th century sources, that mail armour often conforms in medieval art very closely to the body. And if you look at images of knightly brasses, you know, where on a tomb where you've got a flat brass and it's engraved with the image of the knight, usually in a praying hands position, although not always, or indeed an effigy, which is essentially a carved statue of the knight on their tomb. It can be made of stone or alabaster or sometimes wood even. The mail armour conforms their body quite tightly, and they don't look like most reenactors or, for example, Battle of the Nations guys. They don't look massively padded like Michelin Man, or like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, essentially, with armour on top. And this is something actually that bothers me greatly about quite a lot of reenactment armour, and let's include Battle of the Nations type armour in that as well. And why does it look so different? Well, first of all, we just have to say it does look different. If you look at knightly effigies and you look at medieval artwork, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, it's quite body hugging, that armour. It's quite close to the body, whether it's mail or plate. It's closely fitted and shaped to the person's body. And most medieval people, because of the way they lived, tended to be, probably compared to the modern world, on the slimmer side of average, because of course they were getting loads of exercise, they were riding or walking all day, doing much more manual labour jobs, this type of thing, and of course they weren't eating as much sugar and crap as we do in the modern world. But their armour was much closer fitting, and when you look at reenactors or Battle of the Nations, type stuff, type armour, it looks incredibly bulky, and there's one very simple reason for that, and that is padding. Okay, and that's why I'm holding this helmet. So you will see that this helmet currently doesn't have any padding inside. In fact, the leather liner that you see in here, there are padded versions of those. I won't say many, but there's probably, I probably know of about 20 or 30 surviving in original medieval and early Renaissance salets. And there's also examples known from bassinets and other types of helmet. And equally, we know about some arming doublets and padded armour that goes underneath, I'll just put the helmet down now, that goes underneath armour for the body as well. And the headline seems to be that whilst gambesons that were worn by themselves, or jacks or these type of things, acetons that were worn by themselves, not necessarily meaning to be worn with other armour over the top, whilst some of those were really quite big and really quite padded, it does seem that padded garments historically to go underneath armour, in other words arming doublets or acetons as they were sometimes known in the 14th century, tended to be far less padded than some reenactors, and certainly most of the Battle of the Nations type guys are using. And why is that? Well, let's just think about that for a minute. Padding is hot. It also restricts your movement to a certain extent. But perhaps most importantly, if you're fighting someone in armour, be it mail or be it plate mixed with mail or be it full plate harness, the way to defeat them is not to simply hammer on them with a sword. The way to defeat them is either to use a weapon that delivers really massive blows, like a poleaxe, or war hammers, maces, pole arms like halberds and stuff like this, or and of course they would be sharp, or to use thrusting weapons like swords, points, half-swording sword, spear, the point on the end of a poleaxe, the point on the end of a halberd, all of those things. So, if you think about trying to defeat the person in armour, the amount of padding they've got on is not necessarily going to, whereas in a modern sporting context like Battle of the Nations, they're not using sharp weapons, they're not thrusting, they're not allowed to thrust, and they're not really attempting to bypass the person's armour. I know there's some exceptions to that, like you can see them grappling and trying to hit at the back of a person's legs to cause them pain or to make their knees buckle to make them go down so that they're out of the fight. But by and large, in Battle of the Nations or in reenactment, you're not aiming to bypass the armour to injure the person. You're actually doing a type of sport, a kind of hardcore sport, but you're aiming to essentially hit the armour, which is not really historical, because clearly if you've got someone in armour, what you don't want to do is hit the armour, you want to hit the person. So either bypass the armour by putting so much force in one place, like with a mace, for example, or a halberd, or something that's got a point on it, like a warhammer, which will penetrate and go into them, or something that you can stab through gaps or through mail, like a half-sworded longsword. So it's a very different mindset to defeating or to fighting in armour. Fighting in armour in Battle of the Nations or reenactment is utterly different, by necessity, because people don't want to die on a regular basis, is utterly different to actual armoured fighting. And this has a knock-on effect to the padding that's worn underneath armour. If we just think for a second, and I mean I have worn large amounts of padding in conjunction with armour and by itself. Most medieval warfare was conducted in summertime, okay? So we're talking about the hottest part of the year, spring and summer, but the warmest part of the year. If you stick loads and loads of padding underneath your armour, not only are you making yourself heavier, you're going to get tired quicker and you're going to be more immobile, but you're going to run a real big risk of suffering from heat exhaustion. And quite simply, not being a useful soldier. Now bear in mind that your vast majority of the time that you spend in your equipment is going to be spent doing things like guarding places, standing in line, marching, riding, moving equipment around, artillery, this type of stuff, or just standing around doing nothing. But fundamentally, you don't want to be spending huge amounts of your time wearing huge amounts of padding when you do actually get into combat. The things that are most likely to kill you are arrow penetration, spears, the points of weapons, this type of stuff. Things that the padding is not going to really help protect your life from. So quite simply, the needs of modern recreational armoured combat, as seen in reenactment or Battle of the Nations, even, you know, any type of full contact steel combat where they're not really looking to historical accuracy, they're looking to wearing something that looks like medieval armour, putting on extra padding so that it's safer, and then just walloping each other's armour a lot until one person gives up or gets knocked out or whatever, is very, very different requirement to the medieval kind of requirement of needing to have a functional armour that will protect you in battle, but equally, and that's will protect you against real attacks that are intended to bypass the armour rather than attacks that are meant to just land safely on the armour and you're not going to get a bruise, or you're only going to get a bruise. But equally, you've got to function as a soldier while wearing that. And so the headline really for me, and the conclusion, is the reason that we see, people are so used to seeing really big padded are twofold. One, because gambesons and armour, a lot of it is bought off the shelf and isn't made to fit the person properly. And the second reason is because the requirements of modern recreational armoured combat, like SCA or Battle of the Nations, is utterly different to actual armoured combat. And in the modern setting, a lot of padding makes a lot of sense. You could wear a massive gambeson. You don't have to worry about sharp edges, arrows, points of spears. You don't have to worry about penetration and cutting. You only have to worry about blunt force trauma. So therefore you put a big padded gambeson on, and that's fine, that protects you brilliantly. But in a medieval war, in the height of summer, you don't want to be wearing tons of padding that when you do get shot at by an arrow, it's not even going to protect you from arrow penetration anyway. Okay, there we go, guys. Those I understand some people watching this, if you're big fans of reenactment or Battle of the Nations type stuff, you might disagree with some of the nuances of what I've said, but I think fundamentally that's the truth of it. The requirements of modern armoured combat sport are very different to the requirements of historical medieval armoured combat, and that's why, one of the reasons why, we see this big disparity between how people are used to seeing mailed, chain-mailed people look. They tend to historically be less padded. There we go, guys. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.